I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Hello and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I have the extraordinary pleasure of introducing you to fabulous women. Women who are change makers, women who are way showers, women who have taken control of their lives and are making a difference on their planet because they want to be the shift that they want to see in the world. This is important for me because I think it's the time for women emerging. I think it's our time to bring our gifts, our heart, our nurturing, our care to the planet and bring a little more harmony and balance. And so I do these every week, and you meet another fabulous woman. We're on all the platforms: Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, and video on YouTube. Just look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James and subscribe. You can also go to cynthiajames.net. All right, so the woman I want to introduce you to today has been an inspiration for me for many years. Before I even knew her, she was an inspiration, and we will talk about that. But what I want to tell you, her name is Sam Horn. She is the CEO of the Intrigue Agency, a positioning messaging consultancy, which helps people design and deliver TEDx talks, keynotes, funding pitches, and one-of-a-kind brands. She's also the CEO of the Tongue Food Training Institute, a trademark communication skills approach that teaches how to give and get respect at work, at home, online, and in public. She is the author of 10 books, including Tongue Fu, Pop, Someday is Not a Day in the Week, IDEApreneur, and Washington Post bestseller, Got Your Attention. She has been featured in dozens of publications, including New York Times, Forbes, Fast & Company, Harvard Business Review. Oh, and by the way, she's been interviewed on every major network: NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, NPR, and MSNBC. She has spoken to more than 500,000 people worldwide. Sam, I am so happy that you're here.
You know, Cynthia, I've really been looking forward to our time together. You and I get to swap some best practices with your community.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got an extraordinary career, but I want to know how you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a really small town in Southern California called New Cuyama, more horses than people. In fact, Cynthia, I used to ride my horse to the library. That's how small it was.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. And so, all right. So when you were young, were you into reading? Were you into learning?
Absolutely. In fact, thankfully, because of that library, that was really a pattern interrupt in my life, is that Walter Farley's The Black Stallion series was my favorite. And it taught me all about independence and autonomy and resourcefulness. And I just couldn't wait to explore that big adventurous world out there beyond our mountain valley. And it was because of those books that helped give me a glimpse of what was possible beyond our small town.
Okay. So what pulled you out of the small town?
You know, I was very fortunate because my dad was in charge of vocational ag education for the state of California. So we moved to Sacramento. And one of the
Uh-huh.
things is that when we were growing up, my sister and I would be gone on horses all day long, even when we were 7 and 8 years old. And here was what was pivotal. Our parents did not worry. They did not like warn us of all the dangers or like, "Oh, what if they get bucked off or what if their bridle breaks?" It's like something's probably going to go wrong and they'll figure it out. Bridle breaks, figure it out. And so my sister and I grew up seeing the world as an adventurous place instead of a dangerous place because we trusted that instead of, "Oh, what if something goes wrong?" Things will probably go wrong. And when they do, we'll figure them out.
Well, and boy, boy, hasn't that been your life? Because I want to talk about, well, I first heard about you, and I I knew your name, but I didn't know, hadn't seen you, about the 17 years at the Maui's uh, Writers Conference. And so I want to talk about, first of all, what made you want to create a venue for authors to be seen and recognized?
Cynthia, this is something we really have in common is that, so here's the quick origin story of that is I lived on Maui at the time. I did a lot of speaking and training. I would fly over to Oahu to speak at a convention and so forth. One time I came back and a friend called me and she said, Sam, we have a man speaking at the Writers Guild tonight. I'd like you to come. And I said, oh, thanks. I'm tired. I'm in for the night. And she persisted. Nevertheless, she persisted, Cynthia. And it was so rare. I realized that this was the Rumi voice that was speaking to me. It's like, you are supposed to go to this. You don't know why right now. However, the urge and the calling was so strong. So I followed that calling. Well, John Tullius and I really hit it off. And we went out to dinner following that Maui Writers Guild meeting. And he told me that he had a dream, that he wanted to build a publishing festival that was what Cannes was to the film industry. And
Wow.
so I said, well, that's what I do. I put on conferences. So we had this great talk. And now here's the thing, though. He left, he went away. I went to the mainland to speak for a while. When I came back, I got this phone call. He said, okay, we're all set. I said, what do you mean we're all set? He said, we've got the Ritz-Carlton on Labor Day weekend. I said, John, that's 6 weeks away. He said, I know. What do we do now? And so we jumped into it. We had Poet Laureate W.S. Merwin at our very first Maui Writers Conference because we brought the mountain to Muhammad and gave people an opportunity to meet face to face with decision makers.
Well, and I have to tell you, I mean, this was long before I wrote a book, that my friends who were authors and speakers, I mean, you were on the bucket list. I mean, getting to Maui and getting in that place was amazing. And so, what did it do to feed your soul?
That's a great question. So once again, another story where I saw something that was going wrong and I became a woman on a mission to fix it is that our very first year, we had people fly in from around the world for this unprecedented opportunity to pitch to, the head of Random House, etc. And a woman came out of her pitch session with tears in her eyes. I went over, I said, are you okay? She said, I'm not okay. I just saw my dream go down the drain.
Oh.
I said, what happened? She said, I put my 300-page manuscript on the table. He took one look at it. He said, I don't have time to read all that. Tell me in 60 seconds what it's about and why someone would want to read it. She said, my mind went blank. She said, I thought it was my job to write it. I thought it was their job to sell it. And I talked with Bob Loomis, who was the senior VP at Random House. I said, what's going on? And he said, Sam, we've seen thousands of proposals. We make up our mind in the first 60 seconds whether something is commercially viable. And Cynthia, I stood in the back of the room that next day and I watched the pitch sessions. I could predict who is getting a deal without hearing a word being said. You know how? The decision maker's eyebrows. Because right now, point up your eyebrows, and everyone watching or listening, think about something you care about, something you're requesting, recommending, and you're explaining it to someone. Now watch their eyebrows. Because if their eyebrows are knit and furrowed like that, crunch them up, we're confused, right? Confused people don't say yes. Okay, now if the eyebrows are unmoved, it means they're unmoved or they've had Botox. Now, Cynthia, lift your eyebrows right now. Everyone watching and listening, just lift. Don't you feel intrigued, curious, like you want to know more? That means we got what we care about in your mental door. And that's now what I help people do because I saw so many people's dreams go down the drain because they did not know how to do that.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. And I want to get to your books, but I want to talk about the Intrigue Agency because you've worked with a lot of incredible people, people who are even famous who need support to be able to channel their vision. Yeah. So where did Intrigue come from?
I looked for the river through my work because, as you said, I've written a book about Tung Fu. I've written a book, Take the Bully by the Horns. I've written a book called Concentrate that Stephen Covey called masterful and the best book he ever saw in Focus. I thought, now, what's the river that runs through my work? And I thought, whether it's dealing with difficult people without becoming one ourselves, or whether it's coming up with a one-of-a-kind title for a book or a brand or a business, it really is about how can we get people's eyebrows up, right? How can we say something that's so clear, so compelling that people want to, eyebrows up, they're curious, that gets their interest and attention because now we have a connection instead of bye-bye.
Yes, yes. Well, and some of the greatest writers are terrified to speak and terrified to get out in front of people. So I love what you do. So I want to know what is Tongue Fu Training Institute?
Kung Fu is how to deal with difficult people without becoming one yourself. Cynthia, you and I are both storytellers. So once again, here's the origin story, the 60-second origin story. I was in Hawaii, and Dr. Ray Oshiro from the University of Hawaii asked me to give a talk on conflict resolution. Well, I put together a course, and at our first break, there was a gentleman. He didn't even get up to get some water, coffee, get some fresh air. He just sat there gazing off into space. Now I'm curious. I went over. I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, "Sam, I'm a real estate broker. I deal with some very demanding and arrogant people. They seem to think they can treat me any way they want to. I'm tired of it." He said, "I took your course because I thought you were going to teach us some zingers to fire back at people and put them in their place." He said, "That's not what this is about." I said, "You're right." And he was the one who said, "I'm a student of martial arts. I've studied karate, taekwondo, judo." He said, "What you're talking about is like verbal form of kung fu, right?" Eureka, the perfect name, Kung Fu. So it's martial arts for the mind and mouth.
Oh, well, that is incredible. And I just want to pause here for a moment because you are one of the greatest interviewers I've ever met. You sit down with people and you ask extraordinary questions. In fact, that's how the title of my book came, sitting at lunch, and you asking me questions. And when I thought, well, it should be called "Does Your Voice Matter?" you were like, I don't. Maybe it should be "Does My Voice Matter?" And so I just wanted to talk about that for a moment because your level of curiosity is extraordinary. And so does that become like a portal for you, an entree into people's lives?
What a lovely question. I think it comes down to something Mary Oliver said. Mary Oliver said, "Instructions for a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it."
Mm.
And when I'm working with people, I have the privilege of working with very smart, talented people. And, there's a lot of books out there on leadership. There's a lot of talkers on customer service. So how can we say something that gets eyebrows up that people haven't heard before? And so, as you just said, thank you, I pay attention and I listen and I look for the thread that sticks out of the carpet. What do they say? And I think, that's really interesting. Wow, I want to know more about that because that is often the entree to them coming up with a unique positioning and message, title, topic for their brand or their business or their book that helps them pop out of their pack.
Yeah. And by the way, you create safe space
Mm.
so that the person can trust. Because when I got up from that table, I went up to the room and I got the URL and I didn't even know what the book was about. It's like, okay, Sam said this, I'm going. Now, I want to get to your current book, but I want to talk about the fact that I've witnessed you over time. You are a family person.
Mm.
It's very important to you. I see it in your social media, when your talks. So talk to me about how you have managed being a mother and having a family and having this extraordinarily powerful, busy career.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I was really at a crossroads early. I was living in Maui. I had two sons and I was speaking on the mainland. And I'll always be grateful to Maggie Bedrosian, because she helped me get clarity around this issue of these mixed loyalties, right? It's because I flew to a conference and there was Maggie Bedrosian. She said, "How are you doing?" I started telling her, and Cynthia, she asked the best question. She said, "Tell me in one word how you're doing." Isn't that a great question? And I thought about it and I dug deep and I said, "Maggie, I'm conflicted." And her eyebrows flew up. She said, "Conflicted?" She wants to. I said, "Maggie, I was on the beach with my sons yesterday. They were charging into the surf with their boogie boards and slapping those boards down and riding them all the way until their bellies scraped the beach." And I said, "And I didn't want to be anywhere else than right there with them." And then today I'm surrounded by my colleagues and my mind is just racing with all these ideas. I said, "I constantly feel like I'm being torn between two worlds." And she said, "Sam, the words you use to describe yourself define yourself. You better come up with a different word or that's what you're going to be." I tell you, Cynthia, I went back to my room. I thought about it. I finally came up with it. The next day, I'm looking for her in the halls. There she is. I ran up. I said, "Maggie, I figure it out. I'm not conflicted. I'm blessed. I'm
Ah,
torn between two worlds. I have the best of both worlds." And I think as working moms, and if we're a mom, we're always working. They're both, right? That when we stop seeing it as a struggle, when we stop seeing it as a conflict, when we start realizing how fortunate we are and that we have the best of both worlds and that we're blessed, doesn't that reframe it all?
100%. And that could be taken into any area, your mental, emotional, physical health, your spiritual health. It's like, how are you viewing this experience that you're having and what are you naming it?
Right.
That
That's
is
right.
so powerful. Well, I want to talk about your latest book because I happened to be at one of your book signings and it was so intriguing. I was like, this ended too quick. So it's called Talking on Eggshells, kind of like Tung Fu. So where did the title come from?
I was giving a Kung Fu workshop and there was a gentleman. He said, "Sam, I work for a lawyer. He is so volatile. He's like, we never know what's going to set him off. We tiptoe around him. We like walk on eggshells all day long." I said, "Oh, you're not walking on eggshells. You're talking on eggshells." And yet, in our world today, I bet every single person watching, listening can think of at least one person and they talk on eggshells.
Right.
They never know what's going to set this person off. They feel like they're going to lose their temper or fly off the handle or ghost them or something if they say the least little thing wrong. So this book is Elvis said, "When things go wrong, don't go with them." So this book is about how when things go wrong, how to make them right.
Okay, so give me some major points of the book.
I'm going to share one of my favorite examples because the ripple effect of words is really the river that runs through this book. So 60-second story, and then we'll show the ripple effect of words. I was visiting my son, Andrew, in New York. His 1-year-old son, Hero, was crawling across the floor, hauled himself up on a guitar that was on a stand in the corner. He starts banging on the strings. Well, now, if people have paper, unless they're driving, put a vertical line down the center of the paper, and on the left, put words to lose. And on the right, put words to use. On the left,
Ah,
put reactions. And on the right, put responses. Because see, when something goes wrong over on the left, Andrew could have said, no. He could have said, stop banging on the guitar. He could have yanked the guitar away. All reactions, and reactions make things worse, right?
right.
Cynthia, over on the right, he said one word. You know what he said? Gentle.
Oh,
And Cynthia, I saw Hero's face transform in front of me, and he reached back to the guitar and went strum, strum, strum. And in that moment, Hero made music, and it's because Andrew shaped his behavior instead of shamed it. He coached him on how to do it right instead of criticizing him for doing it wrong. And as a result, he will learn from that situation instead of losing face. And my dad used to tell me we can't motivate someone to do better by making them feel bad. And over on the left, telling people to stop doing something, or criticizing them for it, or tell them not to do it, it actually reinforces what they're doing wrong. Instead, what we want them to start instead of stop, or do instead of not do. Now we're a coach instead of a critic. We're shaping instead of shaming their behavior.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And it taught Hero he could create if he was gentle. I think that is so powerful. Okay, so I've come to you as a client and I've got this really horrible boss. and and I either shut down or I want to blow up. So tell me how I could manage to move to the other side of the page.
I love this question, because my first question to you is, this a pattern of behavior? Is it an isolated incident, or is it an ongoing concern? So I'll come back to you. So what's your answer to that?
I would say, I mean, I don't work with this person anymore, but I would say it was an ongoing concern because I never knew what I was going to say or do that was going to be upsetting to this human being.
I really hope people have their notes in front of them, and over on the left, they put, they put intentional, and over on the right, they put occasional. Because see, if this is occasional, if this happens once in a while, maybe they're having a bad day. We all have bad days.
Right.
And if we go to that kind of person and bring to their attention what they said was hurtful or incorrect, or made us feel bad, they will self-reflect and self-correct. They will say, oh my goodness, I was having a bad day. It wasn't fair to take it out on you, Cynthia. See, they'll be accountable for their behavior, right?
Right.
If this is a pattern, though, and they do it intentionally and knowingly and consistently, then they're what I call a 5%er. And I believe that 95% of people care what's fair, and they do self-reflect and self-correct. They want a win-win. They want to cooperate. 5%ers don't care what's fair. They want to win, not a win-win. They want to control, not to cooperate. So with those kind of people, I wrote a whole other book, How to Take the Bully by the Horns, because with 5%ers, the kinder we are to them, the meaner they'll be to us.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important, but I think it really comes down to managing your own energy and getting clear. I mean, when that lady said change the word, I mean, something in you shifted about how you wanted to show up and how you wanted to be. Now, you work with major executives and major companies. I would assume that some of these people have egos. And so how you have a very kind nature. What's your approach to get those people to soften and be present with you?
I love this because this is just recent. So this is a private client. So I'm going to talk in a little bit of vague terms, right?
Okay.
Just
Okay.
suffice it to say, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're competing for a contract with a VA. A lot of companies are. Now, they have 4 hours to walk in and do a demonstration for the VA, having to do kind of with supply chain. And at the end of the 4 hours, then they're going to leave the room, and the VA personnel have to use this new system to prove that they were taught well enough, it's easy enough, straightforward enough, they were instructed how to do it. And whether or not they can do it depends on whether they're going to get this very, very, very big contract. So we're mocking this, right? It's like, okay, let's see your demonstration. Is it clear? Is it overwhelming? Is it like complicated? And at one point, an individual was instructing a sample VA personnel who wasn't getting it. And he lost his cool, and he said, you're making this harder than it needs to be. He said, I've explained this to you 3 times already. And I said, those 2 sentences could have lost the entire multi-million-dollar deal. A whole section of the company has spent a year on this, lots of money preparing. In 2 sentences, it all could have gone away. So see, now what we talked about so that we can have grace around this is that our strength taken to an extreme is our Achilles heel. See, these techies, things come easily to them. It's obvious, right? They're smart. This makes sense. It's like, well, you just do this, this, this. But people who aren't techies and who haven't spent a year on the system are a little slower to get it, and they don't get it right away. And this can be source for exasperation.
Yes.
And when we get exasperated with people, we make them feel stupid. You know, impatience is a low-grade form of contempt. So what we have, why, back to your question, why these individuals are voluntarily changing their behavior is because they understand that everything they poured into this project for the last year could go away in a couple of sentences if they say what's on the tip of their tongue and cause someone to feel stupid. They're going to go, you're not getting the contract. So it's in their best interest to practice when you want to say you're making this harder than it needs to be. If that's right there, instead say, you know, I'll take ownership. I must not have explained that clearly enough. What is it about this that doesn't make sense to you? Do you see, we're not throwing them under the bus by making them feel that they aren't getting it. It's like taking ownership. And why will they do that? What's the incentive? Because they want the rewards every year work. They want this contract. So it's in their best interest to do that. They're not doing it because they're being told to. They're doing it because they want to.
Right. And isn't that important to get clear about what you really want and then really witness, is your behavior or your words going to benefit that and move it forward? It's so powerful. Okay, Sam Horn, how did people find you and your work and your fabulous books?
Well, first, thank you again. It's such a joy. As we said, Cynthia, we only wish that we could do this podcast as a remote at Wonderland Lake in Boulder, right? So people can go to my website, which is easy to remember, samhorn.com, SAMHORN.com. It's got my TEDx talks and my books. And I really hope that people follow me on LinkedIn and subscribe to my newsletter, because my life is my lab. And when I'm out here on the stream trail, or when I have a chance to work with a client, we have an epiphany, I write about it and share that with people. And I hope that people stay connected with me with my newsletter and read the books and let me know if there was particular ideas that resonated with them and how they put them into practice.
Yeah, ladies, I mean, run, don't walk, to see what she does. Okay, Sam, I ask the same last question of every guest. This show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet in this moment?
Hmm. You know, Catherine Graham of the Washington Post said to do what you love and feel that it matters. How could anything be more fun? So if we awaken to the truth that we have agency and that we have the power to create a rising tide family and a rising tide relationship and a rising tide community and workforce, and if on a daily basis we do something that will make a difference for the people around us, we become an enhancer who creates this rising tide world. And when we go to sleep at night, we can look back at the day and know we made a difference.
That is so beautiful. Sam, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for so much for being in my life and continuing to inspire. It's quite beautiful to witness your unfolding and the help that you give to others.
Thank you. It's a 1 + 1, isn't it? Equals 11.
It does. Okay, ladies, I'm going to say the same thing I say to you every time in a different format. This is your moment. This is the time for you to wake up, become aware, of your thoughts, your words, your deeds, your actions, your way of being. You are a miraculous unfolding here for a reason. And so if you can catch that, then you go to people like Sam, you go to places where you can learn how to channel your energy to be a beneficial presence. The world is waiting for you. And I just want you to know I'm so honored to walk this path.